Hi guys, it's Professor Palumbo here. Hopefully you're going to be able to hear this recording a little better. I wanted to walk you through Chapter 6 Hands-On and how to create new forms. In this project, you're going to be copying what you did in Chapter 5 Hands-On, and then we're going to be adding some additional forms. Up until now, we have been using only one form for our projects. Now we're going to see that in addition to our main billing form, we're going to add what's called a splash form. This is a form that kind of hangs there while your application loads. Like when you open Word or you open PowerPoint, you know how you have that little Word window or that little window that says PowerPoint while the application is loading. That's a splash screen, and we're going to create one of those for our application. We're also going to create what's called the About form, which is like a help form that gives the version of the software and the name of the company that produced it. And then we're going to create a form which is going to be used to display our summary information. So instead of using a message box to display the average sales and the total sales, we're going to be using a form to do that. And the benefit of using a form over using a message box is that we have a lot more control over what we can do with that, how we design it and how we use it. We'll have a lot more control using a form versus a message box. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to start out by copying Chapter 5 Hands-On. So I'm going to right-click Chapter 5 Hands-On, copy, and then paste. And then I'm going to rename it. Now this is the only file that you can, or the only folder that you can rename, this highest level folder. After that, you have to let Visual Basic do everything. So I'm going to rename it to Chapter 6 Hands-On. I'm going to double click, and it's okay that it still has the names from the earlier versions in there. In fact, you might even have some names that say Chapter 4 in there. Just walking you through again how to go about making the modifications to the names. As much as you can do in here is pretty much you can go in and right click on the solution name. If you don't see the solution name, go back to the Chapter 5 notes on how to get the solution name to appear. And then you can rename that and click Chapter 6 Hands-On. And then I can rename my project here, rename, and make that a Chapter 6 Hands-On. And then if I go into my project, if I double click my project here, it takes me into the properties of my project. Make sure you're on the application tab in the upper left corner. And in here, you can rename your assembly name and you can rename your root namespace also to Chapter 6 and to Chapter 6. Now, while we're in here, I want to show you one other thing inside these properties, inside the My Project area here. We have a button here called Assembly Information. And this information is going to come into play a lot in this chapter because when we create the splash form and when we create the help about form, it's going to be pulling information from this assembly information. So for example, I want to change my assembly information title to say R and R for reading and refreshment. If I could spell, that would help. Reading and refreshment. And then for my description, I'm going to put calculates. I think they have one in the book there, but I don't know what it is. Calculates sales for R&R. For the company, I'm just going to put my name. For the product, I'm going to put Chapter 6 Hands-On, copyright 2016. Okay, so I'm changing all this assembly information. Don't change the versions and all of that. Just leave that the way that is. Click OK. And now I'm going to close this My Project window for now. Now, to create my new forms, I'm going to click Project, Add New Item. Okay, now when this opens up, there's all different kinds of items that you might be creating. The first one that I'm going to have you do, since it's right here, is the About box. So I'm going to click once. Now this is a template that's going to automatically create the form the way we want it, the About form that we're going to be using. So I click once on it. It automatically gives us the name aboutbox1.vb. That's fine. I'm going to go ahead and hit Add. You'll see in your Solution Explorer window over on the right that it added a form called aboutbox1.vb, and here it is. Now I don't need to do anything to it. all of the information, the description, the product name, the version, the copyright, the company name, it's going to pull all that information from that assembly information that I just modified. So I'm just going to leave that there. I don't need to do anything else to it. I'm going to add my splash form. So again, I'm going to click Project, Add New Item. Now to find the splash form, I'm going to scroll down a little further down into the S's. There it is, splash screen. Click once. It automatically gives us the name splashscreen1.vb. I'm going to go ahead and hit Add. It creates the splash screen for me. I don't need to make any modifications to that either. You can see it comes up in my list over here in Solution Explorer. And then the third form that we need to create is the summary form. So I'm going to click Project. It's a Windows form, so I could click Add Windows Form, but I'm going to continue on down to Add New Item because that's the way I've been adding the items. And if you scroll up and down in through here, the second item or third item up there in the list is a Windows form. And I'm going to click once. The name Form 1 comes up, but I want to modify that. I'm going to change it to summaryform.vb. Summaryform.vb and click Add. Now the summary form is a form, it's not a template, this is just a plain old Windows form, so you have to go to page 270 in your book to determine what you need to add. You're going to add some labels, you're going to add some text boxes, you're going to add a close button, so let me just add the close button in there. You're going to put the text ampersand close on there. And if I double click, I'm just going to be writing me.close for my code in there. So you're going to be adding other things to your summary form. You're going to add some text boxes and labels and things like that, but you have to design that form yourself. Now, how do I get these forms, these three new forms to come up in my project? Well, if I go to my billing form, which is my original form, now when I click Help About, instead of a message box, I want my new form to come up. So I'm going to double click About, and I'm going to go into my code. And now, instead of this message box, I'm going to delete this whole thing. I don't need any of that. And I'm going to replace it with, all I have to do is say the name of my form, about box 1, dot show. Now, when you have to choose between show and show dialog, we're going to choose show dialog for this because the difference between show and show dialog is that show dialog will force the user to respond to the form. In other words, they can't go and do something else until they've clicked OK, until they've gotten rid of that form. It means we have to respond to the form. Okay, so there it is. Now, let's do one more thing, and then I'm going to show you how this works. If I want my splash form to come up that I created, I need to go back into my project, into my properties, and way down here at the bottom, there's a drop-down list that's asking me which is your splash form. You've got 3 forms in this project. Which one is your splash form? Well, I'm going to select it, splash screen 1. The other thing that you have to be aware of is what is your startup form. Up here, we want the startup form is going to be the form that opens up after the splash screen goes away. We don't want to open this up on the about or the summary. We want to make sure that our billing form is still our startup form, and that's going to be the one that comes up after the splash screen is gone. So I've set those things. I'm going to close those properties again. Now just want to show you what happens if I hit my start button and run my project at this point. My splash screen should come up. So let's see what happens. Okay, it's taking a little time. There it goes. There's my splash screen. Notice it says R&R for reading and refreshment. It pops up only for about 5 seconds and then it goes away. The other thing that should come up now is if I click Help About, my About screen form should come up, and there it is. Notice that it pulled in all the information from my assembly information that I included, my description, my Chapter 6 hands-on, and et cetera, et cetera. And I can just click OK to close that. Now, for my summary information, let me go into, let me exit out of here. And if I click File and double click Summary, it takes me to my summary information. Now in here, again, instead of using this message box to display my summary information, I'm going to call my form, my summary form dot show dialog. Okay, and therefore now when I click Start, and I run this. There's my splash form again. And let's say I do some calculations and then I do a new order, clear this out, and I buy 5 iced lattes and I calculate that and I clear that out. Now when I'm ready to do my summary, notice that it's opening up this summary form. Now, obviously, I didn't put all the text boxes and everything that I needed to put there, but it's opening up my summary form, and that's where all of my statistics are going to be displayed. So one other thing about your summary form now. I wrote a procedure called, the me.close for my close button, but there's one other procedure that I'm going to have to write in my summary form because what we want to happen is we want the summary statistics to show up when we open the summary form. Now, in order to do that, we need to have a procedure that executes every time this form is activated. And in order to do that, I'm going to use these drop down arrows. I'm going to select the summary form events, and I'm going to select over here all of the things that happen to my summary form. For example, I have a summary form load event. The summary form load event is an event that happens the first time the form loads. So if there's anything I wanted to code in there, I could code it in there. But what we're going to use is the summary form activated event, because the summary form activated event, it will get executed every time we come back into the summary form, not just the first time it's loaded into memory. So you'll notice on page 277 in your book that we have an event called summary form activated. And I just wanted to show you how to create that because there's no button to double click on, no menu to double click on to get this procedure to be created. So we're using our drop down, selecting our summary form events, and then selecting activated from the list of possible events. And then you're going to write your code there. We're not going to be using the summary form load event, so I can just delete that out and write my code. Now, the last thing that I want to mention to you guys is going back into my billing form code. We're going to be creating something called some friend variables. And the beautiful thing about Chapter 6 Hands-On, for some reason, they did this and they didn't do it in other chapters, but on page 274 through 277 in the book, they're highlighting the code that's different than Chapter 5 Hands-On. And one of the things you'll see is we're creating these friend variables up here. So we're going to, so I'm going to say friend instead of private. And the variables that are going to be friends are the grand total. So I'm going to copy that and make that up here as a friend variable. And then I'm going to take it out of here. It's no longer a private variable. And then my customer count integer is also going to be a friend. So I'm going to put that up here and change the word private to friend. And what friend means is that this variable can be used in more than one form. Private means it's private. This variable is private to only this form. Only this form can access that variable. But friend means that other forms can access that variable. And we need that because our summary form is going to be displaying the grand total, and it's also going to be displaying the customer count and the average. So I have to add average decimal here also is also going to be a friend. So because I'm creating average decimal here, I'm going to remove it from my summary procedure down here. So before we were defining average decimal down here because that's where we were using it, but now because it's a friend, we're going to remove it from there. Then you're going to, do your calculations in your summary procedure to bring up the grand total, the average, and the customer counter. So I'm going to leave you to do the rest of the coding. Follow the code in 274 through 277, and follow, creating the forms and everything I've shown you here tonight. All right, that's it for today, and I will see you next time in the recordings. Bye-bye.